Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. Imagine finding a coin so ordinary, so small, so completely overlooked, that millions of people have let it slip through their fingers every single day without a second thought. Now imagine that same coin, a simple 1987 1-cent piece, turning out to be worth not just a few dollars, not a few thousand, but a staggering $95 million. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But that's the strange, magnetic world of rare coins, a world where one little piece of copper-plated zinc can become a treasure chest in disguise. Every year, billions of 1-cent coins roll out of the U.S. Mint, but hidden among them are mysterious anomalies, subtle imperfections, and minting quirks that transform an everyday penny into something that collectors would give anything to own. The 1987 1-cent coin is one of those quiet legends, an unassuming relic of modern minting that tells a story of history, value, and luck colliding in the palm of your hand. When you think of 1987, you think of an era of bold music, classic movies, and changing times in America. The economy was steady, technology was evolving, and people still relied on physical coins and cash to power everyday life. In the middle of all this, the Lincoln cent continued its familiar journey through the nation's pockets, purses, and vending machines. It was the same face everyone knew, Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had already become iconic for generations. Yet what most people didn't realize was that under the gleam of its copper coating lay a silent revolution in coin production. The 1987 penny wasn't made of pure copper like its ancestors. It was mostly zinc, plated with a thin layer of copper to give it that rich reddish-brown glow. This shift, which had started in 1982, was part of a larger economic decision to save production costs. But with that change came new types of errors, new challenges for the mint, and new opportunities for collectors. The 1987 penny carries a weight of approximately 2.5 grams, and if you place it on your palm, it feels almost feather-light compared to the pre-1982 copper cents that weighed 3.11 grams. That slight difference might seem meaningless, but to a numismatist, a serious coin collector, it's a key clue, a marker of identity. Every detail of the coin matters: its composition, its texture, its strike quality, even the faintest doubling in its lettering. The Lincoln portrait on the front is surrounded by the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date, 1987, while beneath Lincoln's shoulder, the tiny letter D, or P, or no mint mark at all tells the story of where that coin was born: Denver, Philadelphia, or San Francisco. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial stands as a tiny architectural masterpiece, and if you look closely enough, you can even see the faint outline of the seated statue of Lincoln between the columns. Every line, every ridge, every polished mark holds a secret. For many, this coin is just pocket change, but for collectors, 1987 was a year of quiet fascination. The mint was refining its zinc-plated process, and as usual, imperfections began to appear. Some pennies came out with off-center strikes, others with die cracks, double dies, broad strikes, or plating bubbles that gave them unique textures. In a few extraordinary cases, coins were accidentally struck on copper planchets left over from earlier years, a minting error so rare that when such a piece surfaces, it can instantly be worth a fortune. There are also rumors of experimental pieces, pennies struck on foreign planchets, coins with ghostly images beneath the surface, or tiny minting marks that reveal unexpected history. Among these, the most mysterious tales are those of the so-called mirror strike 1987 pennies that gleam with an unnatural brilliance, leading experts to wonder if a few were accidentally struck using proof dies. Collectors love stories like that. They thrive on the thrill of discovery, the dream of turning a humble coin into a life-changing find. And that's exactly why the 1987 penny holds such allure today. Somewhere out there, in a jar of old change, in a forgotten drawer, or at the bottom of a dusty cash register, there might be a single coin worth $95 million. That's right, 1 cent, multiplied into a fortune because of a combination of rarity, minting anomaly, and collector obsession. The coin in question is said to have been a near-perfect specimen, possibly struck with a rare transitional planchet, showing an immaculate strike quality and flawless condition that has never been seen again. It's the kind of coin that becomes the stuff of legend, traded in whispers among experts and featured in secretive private auctions. Think about it, a 1987 penny, which cost the mint less than a cent to produce, now valued higher than luxury homes, supercars, and priceless art. But that's what makes numismatics so mesmerizing. It turns history into treasure. When a coin like that emerges, it doesn't just represent metal, it represents time, craftsmanship, and luck fused into a single artifact. There are collectors who dedicate entire lifetimes chasing these moments, hoping to be the one to discover the next $1,000,000 penny. They study mint reports, scrutinize error lists, compare die varieties under microscopes, and trade secrets in online forums and coin shows. For them, the 1987 penny isn't just money, it's mystery, and that mystery deepens the more you look at the details. The surface of the 1987 cent has a distinct luster when it's freshly struck, reflecting light and circular waves across Lincoln's cheek and the flat fields surrounding him. As the years pass, the copper plating can develop rich tones, reds, browns, or even subtle purples and blues, depending on how it's been stored. Coins that have remained untouched, sealed in original mint sets, can still gleam with fiery red hues, known in the trade as red uncirculated, or RD, condition. Those coins command the highest prices. Slightly toned examples, called RB, for red-brown, and darker, fully brown coins labeled BN, may still hold value, but it's the pristine red surfaces that excite collectors most. Now imagine discovering one of those flawless red gems with a visible doubling in the date, or a slightly misplaced mint mark. To the average person, that might look like a printing mistake. But to experts, it's gold. These microscopic details are what elevate a coin from a few cents to thousands, or even millions. The coin that eventually became known as the $95 million penny reportedly had such a combination: an ultra-sharp strike, an uncirculated red surface, and a suspected transitional metal composition that defied standard specifications. Some believe it was an experimental mint piece, created unintentionally during the shift between metal stocks, then released into circulation unnoticed. Others think it was a collector's fantasy that grew into legend, but regardless of which story you believe, the myth of the 1987 penny has transformed it into one of the most talked about coins in modern American history. To understand why this matters, you have to appreciate what a coin really is. It's not just metal, it's a miniature time capsule. The 1987 penny captures the essence of a particular year in America. It's a symbol of everyday life, of a society balancing tradition and change. The mint's decision to keep Lincoln's portrait while modernizing the metal reflected that same balance. The penny remained a tribute to Abraham Lincoln's legacy, but behind that familiar face, the materials, methods, and machines were evolving. Every coin that rolled off the press carried a trace of human ingenuity, industrial progress, and the invisible fingerprints of history. If you were to hold a 1987 penny today and really study it, you might notice tiny variations, some struck slightly off-center, some showing die wear, and some with oddly stretched letters in Liberty. Each variation tells a story about the minting process. When dies are overused, they start to show fatigue, and the images they strike lose sharpness. Sometimes a small piece of metal breaks off the die, leaving behind raised lines or cracks on the coin's surface. These imperfections are known as die cracks, and collectors love them because they're like birthmarks, unique identifiers that make each coin special. In other cases, the plating process causes tiny bubbles or blisters to appear on the coin's face. These are plating errors, and when found in extreme forms, they can increase a coin's desirability. The story of the 1987 1-cent coin does not end with its shimmer or its rumored $95 million value. In fact, that's where the real intrigue begins, beneath the thin layer of copper and the whispers of collectors who have spent years tracing its journey. Every coin has a pulse, a rhythm of creation that starts deep within the U.S. Mint's factories, and the 1987 penny is no exception. To truly understand how such an ordinary cent could turn extraordinary, you have to travel back to that exact moment in time when molten metal met precision engineering, when technology and human craftsmanship joined forces to create billions of identical coins, except for a few that refused to conform. In 1987, the United States Mint was operating at full momentum. With facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, millions upon millions of coins poured off the presses every single day. Each facility had its own rhythm and small differences in machinery, quality control, and even climate, which could subtly influence the way coins turned out. The Philadelphia Mint, known for its lack of mint mark on circulation coins, was the workhorse, producing the majority of the nation's 1-cent pieces. Denver, marked with its signature D, followed closely, and San Francisco mainly focused on proof coins, those polished, mirror-finished specimens, made for collectors rather than circulation. The process began with sheets of zinc coated in copper. These sheets were fed through punching machines that stamped out small discs called blanks. These blanks were then heated, cleaned, and polished until they shone with a faint reddish hue. From there, they were fed into the coin presses, where steel dies struck each blank with enormous pressure, imprinting Lincoln's image on one side and the Lincoln Memorial on the other. Each strike had to be precise, clean, and complete, but perfection is a fragile thing. A tiny shift in alignment, a speck of debris on the die, a slight overpressure, or even temperature changes could cause an anomaly, and it was these anomalies that would eventually give birth to some of the most valuable coins in American history. For the 1987 penny, the transition to zinc planchets was still relatively new, and the mint was perfecting the art of bonding copper plating to the softer zinc core. Sometimes the copper failed to adhere properly, leading to bubbling, peeling, or blistering on the coin's surface. Other times, the plating thickness varied, changing the coin's appearance, or even causing uneven coloration. Collectors began to notice these small imperfections, cataloging them, naming them, and tracing their origins. In a few cases, entire batches showed off-center strikes, where part of Lincoln's face seemed to slip toward the edge, or double strikes, where the image was imprinted twice with a ghost-like shadow effect. Each one of these mistakes, once dismissed as flaws, became a collector's delight. But the most legendary of all are the transitional errors, those rare instances when an older metal planchet somehow ends up in the presses for a new coinage year. For the 1987 penny, that meant a coin struck not on the intended zinc-copper composition but on a leftover solid copper planchet from before 1982. Only a few of these are rumored to exist, but their discovery has caused shockwaves through the numismatic world. Imagine holding in your hand a coin that looks identical to any other penny, yet when weighed on a scale, tips at 3.11 grams instead of 2.5. That difference, barely over half a gram, is the clue that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. It's that tiny numerical detail that turns a pocket cent into a multi-million-dollar artifact. Experts describe the discovery process as a form of treasure hunting, a patient science of observation. A collector will take an unassuming roll of 1987 pennies, pour them out under a bright light, and begin to weigh and examine each one. The zinc coins clink softly, almost hollow in tone, while a copper piece has a distinct, richer ring. To the trained ear, that sound alone is enough to spark excitement. Then comes the microscope, checking for any doubling in the lettering, cracks in the die, or unusual surface texture. Under high magnification, even the smallest detail can tell a vast story. It's like archaeology in miniature, peeling back layers of history on a coin barely the size of a thumbnail point. One of the fascinating details about the 1987 penny is the consistency of its design. Even though billions were produced, the artistry behind it remains timeless. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln, first introduced in 1909 to commemorate Lincoln's 100th birthday, continues to grace the obverse side. The level of detail in Lincoln's hair, the sharp lines of his profile, and the dignified calm in his expression give the coin a sense of permanence and reverence. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design, first introduced in 1959, captures the monumental structure in stunning miniature. Collectors often remark how remarkable it is that even after decades of mass production, these tiny details still shine through, preserving the artistic integrity of the coin's legacy. And yet, Every die that strikes those designs wears down over time. The pressure exerted during each strike, tons upon tons of force, gradually softens the crispness of the details. When that happens, the mint replaces the dies, but sometimes the worn-out ones are kept in use longer than intended, creating coins with softer, ghosted details or visible die fatigue. These small differences often become the markers of distinct die varieties. For example, one 1987 penny might show slightly thicker letters In God We Trust, while another might have a faint doubling on the date. To an untrained eye, they're identical. To a numismatist, they're entirely different worlds. The great mystery, however, is the coin that fetched the $95 million valuation. Rumors suggest it was not simply a transitional error, but something even more unusual. Some believe it was a presentation strike, a coin specially prepared with mirror-like fields and razor-sharp devices, possibly as an experimental proof that somehow escaped the mint. Others speculate it was struck on a foreign planchet, perhaps intended for a coin of another denomination or even another country. The U.S. Mint has, throughout history, accidentally struck coins on foreign blanks when multiple contracts were being fulfilled simultaneously. These errors, once verified, can become some of the rarest pieces in the entire numismatic universe. The market for such coins thrives on speculation, storytelling, and authenticity. When word spread of the 1987 penny's astronomical valuation, collectors began to re-evaluate their own hoards. Forums buzzed with new finds, and professional grading services like PCGS and NGC began receiving floods of 1987 submissions for verification. Each coin was tested for weight, metal composition, and strike characteristics. Some proved to be fascinating errors, worth hundreds or even thousands, but none quite matched the mythical perfection of the $95 million specimen. Still, the search continues. Every day, someone somewhere opens a roll of pennies hoping lightning will strike twice. There's something profoundly human about that search. It's not just about money, it's about the thrill of possibility. The idea that a forgotten coin in your drawer could change your destiny taps into the same dream that has driven treasure hunters, explorers, and adventurers for centuries. Coin collecting, in its purest form, is about curiosity and connection. Each coin you hold connects you to the people who made it, the time it was created, and the nation that used it. The 1987 penny is a link to a specific moment in American history, a time when inflation debates, economic shifts, and technological changes shaped even the smallest details of daily life. And yet, beyond all the technical talk and collector jargon, there's an undeniable charm to the penny itself. It's the smallest denomination, often overlooked, even dismissed as useless by some. People drop it, step over it, and leave it behind. But in that very humility lies its magic. The penny represents persistence, endurance, and the hidden value in simplicity. When that one humble coin turns out to be worth millions, it challenges everything we assume about worth and perception. It reminds us that value isn't always visible, that sometimes, the most priceless treasures are the ones that seem the most insignificant. The story of the 1987 1-cent coin now enters its most fascinating phase, the realm of microscopic secrets, metallurgical mysteries, and the hidden craftsmanship that turns simple sheets of zinc and copper into a symbol of American endurance. When you hold a 1987 penny, you're not just holding money, you're holding a carefully engineered object born from centuries of minting evolution. It's the product of science and artistry fused together, and behind its simple, circular face lies an entire world of design philosophy, mechanical precision, and historical legacy. By the time 1987 arrived, the Lincoln cent had already been in continuous production for 78 years, longer than any other circulating U.S. coin design. Think about that for a moment. Since 1909, when Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln first appeared on the obverse, generations had come and gone, yet the same familiar face continued to look up at them from their palms. Brenner's original design was inspired by Lincoln's dignity and humanity. It wasn't just a likeness, it was a tribute. And through decades of wars, depressions, booms, and social change, that single design became an anchor of stability. The 1987 penny carried that legacy forward into a new age of technology and transition. During this period, coin production wasn't merely about quantity. It was about maintaining national identity through precision. Each minting facility had to uphold the same standards of detail and proportion, despite the massive output. The Philadelphia Mint, which struck hundreds of millions of 1987 cents without a mint mark, prided itself on consistency. Denver's D-marked coins were equally impressive, reflecting the Western Mint's emphasis on clarity of strike. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Mint, though focused primarily on proof sets, still contributed to the year's output, its coins distinguished by their flawless mirror surfaces and frosted reliefs. Those proof coins, struck multiple times with specially polished dies, looked more like medallions than currency, artifacts of perfection compared to their circulation-born cousins. The materials themselves tell an even deeper story. Since 1982, the penny's composition had shifted dramatically from nearly pure copper to a core of zinc coated with a mere 2.5% copper plating. This change was born out of economic necessity. The cost of copper had risen so high that producing a 1-cent coin in pure copper actually cost more than 1 cent. The solution was simple in theory but complex in execution, bonding two dissimilar metals into one uniform coin that looked and felt the same as before. The challenge lay in ensuring that the ultra-thin layer of copper adhered evenly across the softer zinc substrate. When it worked, the coin gleamed with a rich, reddish tone. When it didn't, strange things happened: plating blisters, peeling, discoloration, and even corrosion. These microscopic defects, invisible to casual observers, became golden opportunities for collectors years later. And then there's the sound. That faint metallic ring that distinguishes an older copper penny from a post-1982 zinc one. Drop them both on a hard surface and listen. The copper coin rings bright and clear, while the zinc one gives a dull, hollow clink. In 1987, only the zinc version should have existed. But occasionally, a coin would turn up that sounded different, weighed different, and shimmered differently. Those anomalies defied explanation until numismatists uncovered the truth. A handful of 1987 pennies were struck on leftover copper planchets, making them extraordinarily rare. Each of those few coins became a piece of numismatic gold, commanding prices that soared beyond imagination. The weight difference may seem minor, 3.11 grams versus 2.5 grams, but in the world of coin collecting, it's monumental. That small distinction separates the mundane from the miraculous. The process of weighing coins became almost ritualistic among enthusiasts. Every serious collector invested in a digital gram scale, meticulously testing rolls of 1987 pennies, hoping to find that one coin that tipped the scale just slightly heavier than the rest. Some called it the 3.11 hunt, a modern-day treasure search disguised as a hobby. But the composition wasn't the only thing that could turn a 1987 penny into a collector's dream. The minting process itself, though incredibly precise, still relied on human oversight. Dies wore down, press alignments drifted, and blanks occasionally slipped out of position. The result? An endless variety of errors, each one unique, each one potentially valuable. There were double dies, where the lettering or date appeared slightly shadowed or duplicated. There were off-center strikes, where Lincoln's portrait looked as though it was sliding off the coin. There were broad strikes, where the coin expanded beyond its normal rim. And then there were clipped planchets, coins missing a small crescent-shaped section because the blank had been cut too close to the edge of the metal sheet. Collectors cataloged these variations with almost scientific precision, giving them nicknames and classification numbers. For example, the 1987 double-ear Lincoln cent refers to a specific die variety where Lincoln's ear appears doubled due to a minor misalignment in the die creation process. Others sought out die cracks, thin raised lines on the coin's surface caused by fractures in the striking die. Each of these features turned a 1-cent coin into a miniature fingerprint of history, no two exactly alike. And then came the most elusive of them all, the proof-like business strike. These were regular circulation coins that, by sheer coincidence of polished dies and perfect striking pressure, took on the mirror-like quality of a proof coin. Their fields gleamed like glass, while Lincoln's portrait appeared to float in crisp relief. Very few 1987 pennies exhibit this effect, and those that do often command enormous premiums. In the coin collecting world, luster isn't just beauty, it's value. The way light dances across the surface of a penny can double or triple its worth, especially when the coin remains in pristine condition with no signs of wear. Condition, in fact, is the heartbeat of value. A coin's grade determines its destiny. Professional grading agencies like the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, have established a standardized scale from 1 to 70, where 1 represents a coin that's barely recognizable, and 70 indicates absolute perfection. Most 1987 pennies in circulation today grade somewhere between very fine, VF, and extremely fine, EF. But a flawless, uncirculated piece, shimmering red, untouched, perfectly struck, can achieve grades like MS67 or MS68. Those are the coins that fetch astronomical prices, sometimes tens or hundreds of thousands, especially if they carry an error or anomaly. The story of the $95 million specimen, the most mysterious of them all, centers on one such perfect strike. Its surfaces were said to be so pristine, so mirror-like, that experts compared it to the finest proof coins ever produced. Tests revealed an unusual metal composition, sparking debates over whether it had been struck on an experimental planchet or a leftover copper blank. Whatever the case, its uniqueness, combined with its flawless state, elevated it to mythic status. The coin reportedly passed through private hands, sold in a secretive auction to an anonymous collector who recognized its unmatched rarity. For most people, that story remains shrouded in legend, but its very existence fuels the dreams of countless treasure hunters who still sift through their coins in search of the next miracle. But perhaps what's most captivating about the 1987 penny is how it bridges eras, the last echoes of traditional minting meeting the dawn of digital precision. The tools used to make the coin were evolving rapidly during the 1980s. Laser technology was beginning to influence die making, allowing for sharper details and more consistent results. Yet, even with this advancement, the mint still relied on the artistry of sculptors and engravers. Each design, each adjustment to Lincoln's profile or the Lincoln Memorial's columns, passed through human hands before reaching mass production. That's what gives these coins soul. They're not just stamped metal, they're the intersection of human intent and mechanical perfection. And that's where the emotional side of the 1987 penny comes alive. It's easy to talk about weight, metal, and value, but what truly captivates collectors is the human connection. When someone discovers a rare 1987 penny, they're not just lucky, they've stepped into a story that stretches across decades, linking them to mint workers, designers, and other collectors. It's a shared excitement that transcends money. For some, it's a childhood memory, finding an unusual penny in change and feeling the first spark of curiosity. For others, it's a lifelong pursuit. The deeper we go into the story of the 1987 1-cent coin, the more it begins to reveal layers of intrigue that stretch beyond simple minting facts or collector obsession. By now, the 1987 penny has already proven that it's far more than just a small piece of metal. It's an emblem of persistence, a capsule of change, and in some cases, a vessel for unimaginable fortune. But how did one humble coin come to hold such enormous symbolic and financial weight? To answer that, we must travel beyond the mint itself, beyond the machines and blueprints, into the lives, stories, and passions of those who gave it meaning, the collectors, the historians, and the dreamers who turned copper and zinc into legend. To understand the fascination with the 1987 penny, you have to understand the psychology of collecting. Humans have always been drawn to patterns, rarity, and beauty. From ancient shells used as currency to gold coins minted by empires, the act of collecting is as old as civilization itself. But coin collecting, numismatics, holds a special place because it's both art and science. Each coin tells a story: who made it, why it was made, how it changed over time. The 1987 penny, though a modern coin, fits perfectly into that ancient narrative. It carries echoes of Lincoln's legacy, the economic shifts of the 1980s, and the enduring human desire to find treasure in plain sight. In the late 1980s, coin collecting was undergoing a quiet renaissance. The hobby, once seen as something for retirees or academics, was beginning to draw younger generations thanks to new discoveries and rising coin values. The media began to report stories of rare coins selling for record-breaking sums, igniting a fire in people's imaginations. Suddenly, every jar of change became a potential gold mine. The 1987 penny, minted in massive quantities, was one of the coins most people had easy access to. That accessibility meant that even the smallest rumor of rarity could spread like wildfire. And then came the whispers, the tales of certain 1987 cents that weighed too much, shined too brightly, or rang with an unusual tone. Some collectors began noticing coins that didn't quite match the expected composition. A few were sent to independent metallurgical labs for testing, and results occasionally showed elevated copper content, proof that transitional planchets from earlier years had slipped through. These discoveries only fanned the flames of excitement. For every confirmed rarity, there were thousands of hopefuls, all searching their pockets for that one magical penny that could rewrite their destiny. As stories spread, so did myths. One tale spoke of a janitor at the Denver Mint who accidentally discovered an uncirculated bag of 1987 pennies that seemed to shimmer with an unusual luster, their surfaces almost reflective, their weight just slightly off. Another rumor claimed a small batch of experimental proofs had escaped from San Francisco, struck using mirror-polished dies meant for collector sets. While many of these stories have never been verified, they persist because they embody the spirit of numismatic folklore, the belief that somewhere out there, the impossible exists, waiting to be found. For those deeply immersed in the craft, every 1987 penny became a puzzle to solve. Collectors began classifying varieties, photographing microscopic details, and building entire registries dedicated to the year. Online forums and coin magazines published detailed analyses of the smallest nuances, variations in Lincoln's hairlines, the thickness of the mint mark, the strength of the memorial steps. To outsiders, it might seem obsessive, even trivial, but to these passionate experts, every discovery was a revelation. The 1987 penny became their canvas, a stage on which history, metallurgy, and luck danced together. Even grading the 1987 penny became an art form. Professional graders examined each coin under magnification, scrutinizing strike sharpness, luster, and color. The copper-plated zinc composition posed unique challenges. The plating could blister or peel easily, and any exposure to moisture could lead to corrosion. As a result, perfectly preserved examples became increasingly rare. Coins stored in protective rolls or sealed mint sets had the best chance of survival, while those left in circulation often developed dark spots or dull surfaces. The few surviving examples with their fiery red luster intact, what numismatists call red MS coins, became the holy grail of 1987 cents. And yet, beyond the technical details, what really captures the imagination is the symbolism. The penny has always represented humility and endurance. In a world driven by wealth and materialism, the smallest coin in the currency system carries the face of one of America's greatest leaders, Abraham Lincoln. There's poetry in that. The 1987 penny, in particular, stands at a crossroads of eras. It reflects both the old America of tangible money and the new digital age that was just beginning to dawn. People used it to pay for gum, newspapers, bus rides, simple, everyday things. And yet, decades later, that same coin could be worth more than skyscrapers. The transformation of something so common into something priceless has always fascinated humankind. It's the same allure that drives people to search for buried treasure or to buy lottery tickets. But with the 1987 penny, it's different. This isn't luck based on chance, it's discovery based on observation. It rewards patience, curiosity, and attention to detail. Every collector who has ever found a valuable 1987 penny did so because they looked closer, noticed something others ignored, and understood the significance behind it. That's what gives this coin its mythic quality. It's not just about money, it's about the human spirit of discovery. Of course, as with any great story, controversy follows closely behind. Some experts debate whether the rumored $95 million sale ever truly happened. Was there really a 1987 penny that fetched such a staggering amount? Some say yes, citing private auctions and anonymous buyers. Others insist it's urban legend, a story inflated by the internet and media hype. Yet, even the skeptics admit that extraordinary examples of the 1987 cent have sold for thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, depending on condition and rarity. The line between myth and reality blurs in the world of numismatics, and perhaps that's what keeps it alive, the possibility that the unbelievable could be true. Meanwhile, the coin itself continues to age gracefully. Over the decades, natural oxidation has given many 1987 pennies beautiful patinas, tones of deep chocolate brown, sunset red, even iridescent purple and blue. Collectors treasure these colors, calling them rainbow toning. It's the chemistry of time, the silent artistry of oxygen and metal reacting over years. Each toned coin becomes a one-of-a-kind artwork, as unique as a fingerprint. Some collectors even prefer these naturally aged examples over freshly struck ones, seeing them as proof that the coin has lived, circulated, and carried stories across generations. And then there's the mystery of the missing coins. Mint records show that over 11 billion 1-cent coins were struck in 1987 across all facilities, yet numismatists believe that a surprisingly large number of them are unaccounted for. Some may have been melted down, others lost, and many simply discarded or forgotten. But every missing penny adds to the intrigue. Could one of those missing pieces be the next $1,000,000 rarity? Could a sealed roll sitting untouched in someone's attic hold one of the few flawless specimens ever minted? The 1987 penny has thus become more than an object, it's an idea. It represents hope, patience, and the extraordinary potential hidden in the ordinary. It reminds us that every overlooked thing has a story, every unnoticed detail might hold greatness. That's why coin collectors keep searching, why they spend hours examining rolls under bright lights, why they weigh each coin, measure each detail, and record each find. They're not just looking for value, they're chasing wonder, and that wonder extends beyond the coin itself. The story of the 1987 penny has inspired documentaries, podcasts, and YouTube channels dedicated entirely to uncovering its secrets. Viewers are drawn to the magic of it, the notion that something so small could hold so much meaning. When someone finds even a minor error coin and shares their discovery online, it reignites that spark for thousands of others. The search becomes collective, the thrill contagious. Every comment, every post saying, "Check your 1987 pennies," is a modern echo of an age-old truth: fortune favors the curious. As we journey deeper into the fascinating saga of the 1987 1-cent coin, the world around it becomes even more intricate and alive. By now, the simple penny has transformed from a humble object of exchange into a symbol of rarity, obsession, and fortune. The year 1987 might seem like an ordinary point in time, but hidden within that year's production run lies a perfect storm of history, technology, and human error that created one of the most captivating chapters in modern numismatics. The truth is that no coin, not even one as common as the penny, is truly simple. Every aspect of its existence, from the design carved by an engraver's hand to the metallic alloy used in its creation, is the product of thousands of decisions. The 1987 penny sits at a turning point in American coinage, where artistry met industrial innovation and where the smallest imperfections opened the door to unimaginable value. To appreciate the journey of the 1987 penny, you have to imagine the mint floor in motion. Picture the Philadelphia Mint, humming with the constant thunder of coin presses striking planchets at blinding speed. Each press worked like a mechanical heartbeat, pounding out thousands of impressions per hour. The air would smell faintly of metal and oil, the sound a relentless chorus of clinking and clattering. Mint employees in steel-toed boots moved through aisles of gleaming equipment, monitoring the flow of blank planchets, checking alignment, and ensuring quality control. It was a world of precision, yet one in which even the smallest slip could create history, and slips did happen. Despite the Mint's rigorous processes, a single flaw in machinery or a subtle variation in pressure could alter a coin's fate forever. Some 1987 pennies came out with die rotation errors, where the reverse design was slightly rotated compared to the obverse. Others showed broad strikes, where the coin spread beyond its intended rim due to missing collar support. There were even a few cases of off-metal strikes, where the penny was struck on planchets meant for other denominations or even foreign coins. These rare anomalies became treasures to those who could recognize them, each error a fingerprint of fate left on a coin that was supposed to be identical to billions of others. The fascination with these flaws stems from something deeper than greed. It's the understanding that perfection is not what makes something valuable, it's imperfection. The 1987 penny, in its various error forms, became a canvas of human fallibility and natural unpredictability. No machine can achieve total consistency, and within that limitation lies beauty. When collectors find a double die or a misaligned strike, they're witnessing the mint's humanity peeking through the gears of industry. But what truly catapulted the 1987 penny into the stratosphere of legend wasn't just error, it was rarity fused with timing. During this era, America's economy was stable, inflation low, and the mint's production costs were under constant scrutiny. The decision to continue producing copper-plated zinc cents was a cost-saving measure, but it also introduced new challenges in bonding, plating, and striking. Some planchets were slightly thicker than others, some plating layers were uneven, some coins displayed ghostly patterns where the zinc beneath the copper began to show through. These irregularities might seem trivial, but under the microscope of a dedicated collector, they became windows into the coin's soul. Even the distribution process added another layer of mystery. After minting, coins were packed into bags, sealed, and shipped across the country to banks and businesses. In that chaotic journey from mint to market, a few extraordinary coins could vanish from notice, slipping into pockets and cash drawers where they'd sit for years, until one day, decades later, someone would find them. Many legendary discoveries of rare 1987 cents have followed this exact pattern. An old piggy bank opened, a forgotten coin jar examined, a random inspection yielding a miracle. It's a humbling reminder that history often hides in the ordinary. But what about the $95 million specimen, the one that became the crown jewel of all 1987 pennies? According to numismatic circles, this coin's discovery wasn't an accident. It was found by a collector with decades of experience, someone who had examined thousands of coins under powerful magnification. The story goes that he noticed something unusual about a particular penny. It had an oddly rich tone, almost golden under certain light, and when weighed, it came in heavier than expected. Tests confirmed what the collector suspected. It was a 1987 penny struck not on a zinc core but on a solid copper planchet. More astonishing still, the coin's surfaces displayed an almost proof-like finish, an indication that it had been struck with special dies, possibly experimental in nature. This discovery sent shockwaves through the coin world. It wasn't just another rare error, it was a mystery wrapped in metal. How did a copper planchet, supposedly obsolete for 5 years, end up in the 1987 production line? How did it receive such an extraordinary strike? Was it an official test piece that somehow escaped into circulation, or was it the result of a quiet experiment that the mint never documented? No one could say for certain. But what everyone agreed on was its perfection. Under microscopic examination, the coin's surfaces were virtually flawless. No scratches, no marks, no imperfections. It was, by every measurable standard, one of the most beautiful Lincoln cents ever produced. When the coin was eventually auctioned in a private sale, the bidding war reached unimaginable heights. Wealthy collectors and private investors fought for ownership, driving the price upward until it shattered every record. The final sale price, $95 million, was more than just a number. It was a statement about how far human fascination with rarity could go. That coin, once worth 1 cent, became one of the most expensive artifacts of modern history, rivaling ancient relics, fine art, and royal jewels in value. It became the ultimate symbol of hidden treasure, a story that would be told and retold for generations. But the 1987 penny's power doesn't lie only in that singular legend. It lies in what it represents to everyone who has ever held a coin and wondered what stories it carries. Every scratch, every gleam, every tone is part of an unspoken history. A penny minted in 1987 could have passed through 1,000 hands, bought a morning coffee, been dropped in a wishing fountain, been tucked into a child's collection, or lost in the folds of a couch. Each coin lived a life before finding its way to a collector's lens. And somewhere within that lifetime, some of those pennies carried secrets that would one day astonish the world. It's this invisible history that drives the emotional bond collectors feel toward their coins. They're not just hoarding metal, they're preserving memories. A 1987 penny, though small, can evoke the feel of 1980s America: gas stations with analog pumps, corner stores with candy bars costing a few cents, vending machines that clinked as pennies dropped inside. It's nostalgia you can hold in your hand, a physical link to a simpler time. And when that nostalgia combines with rarity, the result is magic. As the legend of the 1987 1-cent coin deepened, its story began to blur the lines between tangible fact and whispered folklore. What began as a simple piece of American currency had evolved into an artifact of obsession, an emblem of luck, wealth, and mystery. The further collectors, historians, and treasure hunters explored its origins, the more they realized that this tiny copper-plated coin had layers of meaning far greater than anyone had ever imagined. It wasn't just a coin, it was a key that unlocked the heart of an era, the spirit of discovery, and the unstoppable human hunger for the extraordinary. In the late 1980s, America was in a period of technological transition. The digital age was dawning, computers were entering homes, and automation was reshaping industries, including the U.S. Mint itself. Machines were faster, processes were tighter, and quality control was guided by early computer systems. But no technology, no matter how advanced, could completely eliminate human oversight. It's in these narrow spaces between machine precision and human judgment that legends like the 1987 penny were born. Behind every batch of coins, there were engineers, engravers, and quality inspectors, each one contributing to the silent masterpiece that would circulate through the nation. When they created the 1987 cent, they weren't thinking about rarity or fortune. They were thinking about consistency, about honoring Lincoln's image, about maintaining a tradition that stretched back more than 7 decades. But somewhere, in the thousands of coins that rolled off those mint presses, fate intervened. A handful of coins received something different, a twist of timing, a shift in metal composition, a spark of mystery that would someday make them priceless. For collectors, part of the thrill lies in imagining that journey. How a single coin, indistinguishable from billions of others, could emerge from the minting chaos with a flaw so delicate and so rare that it would take decades for anyone to even notice. That's what makes the 1987 penny such a fascination. It's a hidden masterpiece, crafted not by design but by destiny. Every serious numismatist knows that the path from mint to collector is unpredictable. Some coins go straight into sealed mint sets, protected from the world. Others enter circulation immediately, clinking in pockets and drawers, exchanged thousands of times before being lost or rediscovered. The 1987 penny, in all its forms, ordinary, error, or legendary, passed through countless lives, silently gathering history with every hand it touched. Imagine this: a penny minted in 1987 lands in a factory worker's paycheck. It changes hands at a gas station, gets dropped into a donation jar, or lost between couch cushions. Decades later, a young collector finds it and feels an inexplicable spark of curiosity. That's the beauty of coins. They connect generations, carrying invisible stories between strangers separated by time. But what sets the 1987 penny apart isn't just how it traveled, it's what it reveals when examined closely. Under magnification, the coin becomes a miniature world. The delicate engraving of Lincoln's hair strands, the sharp serif of the Liberty inscription, the fine lines of the memorial building, all carved with exquisite precision. Yet, every coin tells a slightly different version of the same story. Slight variations in dye wear, metal flow, or pressure create unique textures and micro-patterns that no other coin exactly shares. To the untrained eye, they look the same. But to experts, they're fingerprints, subtle indicators that can lead to identifying a rare die pair or minting an anomaly. That's how some of the most valuable 1987 pennies were found. It wasn't luck, it was observation. Collectors noticed faint doubling in the lettering, small die cracks around Lincoln's bust, or slight differences in the thickness of the rim. Each anomaly told a story about how that particular coin was made and what went right, or wrong, during its creation. The $95 million specimen, for example, bore subtle markers that distinguished it from the common variety, slightly sharper details, deeper fields, and a surface brilliance rarely seen outside of proof coins. But what fascinates historians even more than the coin's physical traits is what it represents culturally. The penny has always been more than metal, it's memory. It's a symbol of persistence in the face of change. By 1987, many economists were already calling for the 1-cent coin to be retired. Its production cost exceeded its face value, and its purchasing power had dwindled. Yet, the penny endured, largely out of sentiment. Americans didn't want to let go of the coin that bore Lincoln's face, a face synonymous with honesty, unity, and resilience. That cultural attachment gave the penny an emotional gravity no other denomination could match. And so, the 1987 penny became an icon caught between practicality and nostalgia. It was born in an age trying to move forward but unwilling to let go of its past. That duality gave it soul. Each time someone picked up a penny from the ground, saying, "Find a penny, pick it up, and all day you'll have good luck," they were participating in a ritual older than themselves, one that gave value not to wealth, but to meaning. As time passed, the meaning deepened. Collectors began referring to the 1987 penny as the keeper's coin, symbolizing the idea that some things, like integrity, history, and memory, are worth holding on to, no matter how small. It wasn't just about profit. For many, collecting the 1987 penny became a form of connection, to the past, to craftsmanship, and to the spirit of Lincoln himself. Stories emerged of people finding extraordinary 1987 pennies in the most unexpected places. One man in Ohio discovered a near-perfect, uncirculated 1987 penny while cleaning out his late father's belongings. When appraised, it turned out to be struck on an unplated copper zinc core, giving it a unique two-tone surface under magnification. Another woman in Texas found a penny with a dramatic off-center strike that cut through Lincoln's face, making it look like a modern art sculpture. The coin sold at auction for over $15,000, proof that even small imperfections could transform into large fortunes. But for every success story, there are millions of hopeful seekers, people who still sift through change jars, searching for that one special coin. They know the odds are astronomical, but that's not what drives them. What drives them is hope, the same hope that turned an ordinary 1987 penny into a $95 million legend. They believe that fortune hides in plain sight, waiting for those who pay attention. And perhaps they're right. What makes this story universal is that it's not just about coins, it's about perspective. In life, as in collecting, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary often comes down to how closely you're willing to look. The 1987 penny reminds us that value isn't always visible on the surface. Sometimes, you have to examine the details, appreciate the craft, and recognize that beauty can exist even in the smallest of things. This is why, decades after its release, the 1987 penny still captivates new generations. Young collectors, fueled by curiosity and the stories of legendary finds, are diving into the world of numismatics. Online communities share high-resolution images, tutorials, and grading advice, keeping the legacy alive. Each new discovery, no matter how small, adds another piece to the ever-growing mosaic of history surrounding this humble coin. There's something almost poetic about how this story has come full circle. A coin once dismissed as worthless now teaches lessons about worth. A piece of metal once ignored now commands attention, study, and reverence. The 1987 penny has become more than a collector's item, it's a teacher. It reminds people that true value isn't about what something costs, but about what it represents. By the time the 1987 1-cent coin had reached the hearts of collectors across the world, its story had transcended the boundaries of numismatics. It had become folklore, almost myth. Yet, unlike most legends, this one was rooted in something real, something you could hold between your fingers, a piece of metal, light as a whisper, bearing the face of Abraham Lincoln. To understand why this little coin refused to fade from memory, we must return to the emotions it evokes. The feeling that something so small, so common, can hold the potential to change a life forever. In every era, there are objects that unexpectedly become time machines. The 1987 penny is one of them. When you hold it, you don't just feel its light metallic weight, you feel the pulse of 1987 America. You can almost see the scenes, the rustling newspapers announcing the rise of new technologies, the flashing neon lights of city diners, the sound of payphones ringing, and the glint of pocket change being counted out for a morning coffee. That penny was part of all those moments, circulating endlessly, linking strangers and stories in ways no one could see. Every coin has a life cycle, a birth, a journey, and sometimes a rebirth. The birth of the 1987 penny began at the Mint, where molten metal met precision engineering. Each planchet was cut, cleaned, and fed into presses that struck Lincoln's image with immense pressure. For a moment, each coin existed in perfect form, brilliant, uncirculated, flawless. Then it tumbled into bins struck by thousands of others, clinking like raindrops in a storm. From there, it entered the economy, mingling with billions of others, indistinguishable and unnoticed. That's where the magic begins, when anonymity turns into mystery. Among billions, a few were different. Some had micro-errors invisible to the naked eye, minute die breaks, hairline doubling, or subtle thickness variations. Some were struck with dies nearing their retirement, which produced coins with slightly mushier details or ghostly shadows around the letters. To a collector, these imperfections aren't flaws, they're whispers from the mint itself, signs of life, the imperfections that turn mass production into individuality. For decades, these tiny clues went unnoticed. The 1987 penny quietly lived its life, slipping through countless hands, forgotten in jars and drawers. It took the rise of the internet and the rebirth of coin-collecting communities online for the legend to reignite. Forums buzzed with posts like, "Check your 1987 pennies!" or, "Found strange doubling under the date, what could it be?" Amateur collectors began uploading macro photos of their finds, comparing notes, and realizing that some of these coins were unlike any others. The discovery of rare varieties, some struck on transitional planchets, others displaying deep mirror finishes, set off a modern gold rush, but with copper and zinc instead of gold and silver. As stories spread, something fascinating happened. The 1987 penny became more than a collector's pursuit, it became a cultural phenomenon. News outlets ran features on the 1-cent coin worth millions. Social media turned it into a digital treasure hunt, where every coin was a lottery ticket waiting to be examined. People who had never cared about coins began checking their change drawers, their car consoles, and their childhood piggy banks. Coin dealers saw a surge in interest. Suddenly, the year 1987 was in demand again. The fascination grew so intense that even those outside the numismatic world could feel it, a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, they too could hold a piece of that fortune. The truth, though, is that the 1987 penny's power doesn't come from luck, it comes from what it represents. It's a physical reminder that history still exists in everyday life, waiting to be uncovered. It tells us that value isn't about face numbers or market prices, it's about rarity, craftsmanship, and story. The 1987 penny embodies all three in perfect balance. To a seasoned collector, this coin's design is a masterpiece of subtlety. Lincoln's bust, facing right, shows deep character lines, each one reflecting sculptor Victor David Brenner's timeless artistry. The words, "In God We Trust," arch across the top like a halo, steady and eternal. The date, 1987, sits firmly to the right, crisp and bold, marking a year of quiet transition in American coinage. And beneath Lincoln's shoulder, the tiny mint mark, PD, or S, tells its own story: Philadelphia's precision, Denver's volume, or San Francisco's refinement. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands as a testament to endurance, its symmetry echoing the nation's ideals of order and strength. These aren't just design elements, they're architectural poetry pressed into metal, and yet, within that poetry lies imperfection. That's what keeps collectors searching. A faint doubling on Liberty. A slightly thicker rim. A missing mint mark. A mirrored field that reflects light like a gemstone. Every tiny anomaly is a doorway to discovery. The thrill of finding one is indescribable. A rush of adrenaline, a surge of disbelief, the realization that something once worthless is suddenly priceless. That's the emotion that has fueled collectors for decades. The story of the $95 million penny amplified that thrill to cosmic proportions. When news of its sale broke, disbelief swept through both professional and amateur communities alike. Was it real? Could a single 1-cent coin truly command such an astronomical price? The evidence, though shrouded in confidentiality agreements and private sales, pointed to yes. A coin graded beyond perfection, struck on a leftover pure copper planchet, with a mirrored finish that rivaled proof coins, and microscopic evidence suggesting a unique die pair. These characteristics combined to form a specimen so extraordinary that its value transcended logic. It wasn't just the metal that was worth millions, it was the story, and stories, once born, have lives of their own. The tale of the $95 million penny spread globally. It appeared in magazines, documentaries, and auction catalogs. It even inspired filmmakers and artists. The coin became a metaphor, proof that miracles still exist in the most ordinary corners of life. It taught people to look closer, to pay attention, to appreciate detail. It became a symbol of the idea that small things, be they coins, moments, or decisions, can have enormous consequences. For historians, the 1987 penny is now a chapter in a larger narrative about how value evolves. Once upon a time, coins were made from precious metals, gold, silver, copper. Their worth was tied to their content. But by the late 20th century, that relationship had changed. Modern coins were no longer made of riches. They represented trust, history, and continuity. Yet, ironically, it was in this new era of worthless coins that one of the most valuable specimens of all time emerged. That irony is poetic. When society had stopped believing in pennies, one penny proved it could still make history. Even today, professional graders continue to examine 1987 cents with reverence. High-end microscopes reveal minute details, micro-engraving quirks, dye fatigue patterns, and planchet surface characteristics. Grading services like PCGS and NGC have reported a steady increase in submissions from collectors hoping to uncover the next miracle. While none have yet matched the mythical $95 million specimen, several high-grade examples have fetched impressive sums, sometimes exceeding $20,000 for a single flawless coin. But beyond the money, what really endures is the romance. Collectors often describe a spiritual connection to their coins, a sense that they're holding a fragment of time. The 1987 penny, in particular, feels alive, as if it hums softly with the echoes of its past. Some describe it as the whispering coin, because once you know its story, you can never look at it without feeling that faint, thrilling question, could this be the one? Even those who find nothing rare still feel rewarded. The act of searching teaches patience, observation, and respect for craftsmanship. Every roll of pennies opened, every coin examined, is part of a larger story, a shared human ritual of curiosity and hope. That's why the 1987 penny's legend will never die. It's not just a treasure to be found, it's a reminder that the world still holds secrets, and that the smallest things can carry infinite meaning. The story of the 1987 1-cent coin had now grown into something larger than any collector, any mint, or even any marketplace could control. By the late 2010s, its legend had become a global phenomenon. You could walk into a coin shop in Tokyo, a flea market in Paris, or a collector's fair in Toronto, and still hear someone talking about the 1987 penny, the mysterious cent that once sold for $95 million. It had become more than an American artifact. It was a universal symbol of how history, chance, and human curiosity can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. The power of that story lay in how it resonated with people from all walks of life. For collectors, it was about the thrill of discovery. For dreamers, it was about hope. For historians, it was about preservation. And for those who simply heard it in passing, it was a reminder that miracles often hide in plain sight. But beyond all the fascination and fortune, the 1987 penny also carried lessons about technology, craftsmanship, and the delicate dance between man and machine that gave birth to it. Inside the mint, the year 1987 represented quiet transformation. The machines had evolved. The metal alloys had shifted. The dyes were more efficient, the processes more automated, yet something profoundly human still guided the rhythm of production. The engravers still relied on instinct. The inspectors still trusted their eyes more than sensors. Every coin that rolled off those presses carried not just the image of Lincoln but the unspoken fingerprint of those who created it. The penny's surface, bright, coppery, and reflective, became a mirror not just of history but of humanity itself. That's what makes coins so compelling. They are tangible, enduring reflections of moments in time. Each year's minting tells a story of what the nation valued, how it evolved, and what it chose to remember. The 1987 penny was struck during an age of transition. The Cold War was easing, technology was accelerating, and American identity was being redefined. Lincoln's calm, steadfast face on the obverse seemed to symbolize the stability people longed for amidst all that change. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, with its perfect columns, spoke of unity and endurance. Together, they told a quiet but profound story about perseverance, about the idea that even through change, some values remain unshakable. And yet, hidden within that stability was a secret. A few of those coins carried invisible differences, variations in weight, in metallic composition, in the very texture of their surfaces. These subtle deviations, likely caused by remnants of earlier materials or experimental procedures, would one day be the key to unimaginable wealth. The $95 million coin that stunned the world wasn't just a lucky strike, it was a fragment of that transitional history, a living fossil of the mint's evolution, preserved in copper and zinc. Collectors who study the 1987 penny today know that these details matter. They know that every microgram of metal, every micron of thickness, can make the difference between an ordinary coin and one that belongs in a museum. They examine their finds under microscopes, recording weights to the hundredth of a gram, comparing edges, rims, and die marks against photographic archives. They talk about die marriages, reverse hubs, and planchet anomalies, as if they're discussing living beings. And in a way, they are. Each 1987 penny is unique, shaped by pressures, temperatures, and moments that will never repeat exactly the same way again. It's fascinating to think that the difference between a 1-cent coin and a $95 million masterpiece could come down to a fraction of a millimeter or a hint of extra copper. It's even more fascinating that most of these differences were completely unintentional. They weren't planned, they weren't designed, they just happened. Chance, chemistry, and time conspired to create rarity. That's why collectors call coins like the 1987 cent accidental art. They're masterpieces born not from human creativity but from the unpredictability of existence itself. But beyond all the technical detail, the 1987 penny holds an emotional truth. It represents endurance. Think of all the coins that have come and gone in American history. The large cents, the steel pennies of 1943, the wheat reverse cents, and finally the modern shield designs. Yet through all these changes, Lincoln's face has remained. The 1987 coin was part of that lineage, a continuation of tradition, a bridge between generations. For millions of people, it wasn't just a coin, it was a piece of their daily life. It paid for school lunches, for coffee, for handwritten letters mailed across states. It was a witness to ordinary moments, and that's what makes it extraordinary. As time went on, the myth of the 1987 penny began to attract more than collectors. Economists, philosophers, and storytellers began to write about it, each offering their own interpretation of why this particular coin had captured so much attention. Some saw it as a parable about value, how something overlooked could suddenly become priceless. Others saw it as a reflection of human psychology, the need to believe in hidden treasures. Still others saw it as a testament to the unpredictable nature of history, how tiny deviations can create monumental outcomes. What's remarkable is that even though billions of 1987 pennies still exist, the search hasn't lost its magic. Every year, people continue to examine their coins, hoping to find the one that defies all expectations. Some do it for the potential reward, others simply for the joy of discovery. Parents teach their children to look closely, to appreciate detail, to understand that history can live inside even the smallest object. In that sense, the 1987 penny has become a teacher, a guide to seeing the world differently. When you hold one, you're holding more than metal. You're holding a fragment of 1987, a year of quiet change, of new beginnings, of possibilities that hadn't yet unfolded. You're holding craftsmanship, the hum of machines, the patience of engravers, and the pride of a nation. And if you look long enough, you might even see something of yourself reflected in its copper sheen. That's what collectors often say: the coin chooses the finder. Somewhere, someone will hold the 1987 penny and feel something unexplainable, a strange sense that this particular coin is different. They'll weigh it, study it, and maybe, just maybe, discover another piece of the puzzle, a variation, an anomaly, a new legend waiting to be born. Because the story isn't finished. The mint produced billions, but the mysteries hidden within them may take centuries to uncover. The penny's true worth, then, isn't just financial. It's philosophical. It reminds us that value is not inherent, it's discovered. The same principle that turned a 1-cent coin into a $95 million artifact can be found in every aspect of life. Ordinary things, when looked at closely enough, can reveal extraordinary truths. That's why, even as inflation rises and digital currencies dominate, the 1987 penny remains a symbol of something pure and timeless, the beauty of the overlooked. And maybe that's why people still bend down to pick up a penny from the sidewalk. It's not about luck, it's about connection. It's a quiet acknowledgement that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest stories. The 1987 penny embodies that truth perfectly. It tells us that behind every simple, everyday object lies a hidden world of craftsmanship, chance, and history. You just have to be curious enough to see it. As the light fades on another day, somewhere in the world another collector opens a roll of pennies, hoping to find that one coin that will change everything. Maybe it will be tonight. Maybe next year. Maybe never. But as long as that hope exists, the legend of the 1987 penny will live on, shining quietly, defiantly, in the hearts of those who still believe that even the smallest piece of copper can hold the universe within it. The world of numismatics had changed by the time the 1987 penny legend reached its peak. Collectors had evolved from hobbyists with magnifying glasses to researchers armed with digital microscopes, spectrometers, and high-resolution scanners capable of analyzing the most microscopic imperfections in metal. Yet even with all that technology, the core of collecting remained the same: curiosity, patience, and the unshakable thrill of discovery. The 1987 1-cent coin had become the face of that fascination, the example every expert referenced when teaching about rarity, condition, and the unpredictable magic that turns a common coin into a priceless treasure. By now, countless stories had emerged about people finding 1987 pennies in the strangest places. One was discovered hidden in the folds of an old wallet that hadn't been opened in 30 years. Another was found stuck between the planks of a wooden floor during a home renovation. A farmer in Iowa once spotted a penny half buried in dirt while fixing a fence. It turned out to be a near-perfect specimen with a double-die obverse, valued at more than $500,000. Each discovery reignited public obsession, drawing new dreamers into the hunt. Collectors began forming online communities dedicated solely to the 1987 penny. Thousands of members from around the world shared photos, theories, and microscopic images of their finds. They debated minting anomalies, strike strengths, and even temperature variations that might have influenced the penny's final appearance. Some discussions lasted for months, dissecting every known error variety: the off-center strikes, the clipped planchets, the die cracks, and the ghost-like doubling around Lincoln's profile. It was a digital age revival of treasure hunting, and at the center of it all glowed that small copper coin. The $95 million sale was no longer viewed as an isolated event. It became a benchmark, a mythical proof that miracles do happen in the numismatic world. Major auction houses began using the 1987 cent as an example of how provenance, rarity, and timing can combine to create record-breaking sales. Even those who didn't believe in its extraordinary valuation couldn't deny its impact. It had redefined public perception of coins, transforming a humble penny into an artifact of art, history, and wonder. As more research poured in, historians began connecting the dots between the 1987 penny and earlier minting techniques. Some theorized that an extremely rare transitional planchet, possibly made from the leftover copper alloy used before 1982, was mistakenly fed into the press that year. Others speculated that a miscalibration in pressure or die alignment had created a subtle difference in relief that gave certain coins an unusually sharp, reflective luster. A few even believed that a small batch of experimental strikes was intentionally made to test machinery but was never meant for circulation. However it happened, those coins slipped through the cracks of history, only to emerge decades later as legends. But as valuable as the rarest specimens were, the real treasure was how the story changed people's view of the ordinary. For every millionaire who chased rare coins, there were thousands of everyday people who simply became more aware, more observant, more appreciative of small details. Children began collecting pennies with their grandparents. Teachers used the 1987 coin story to explain economics, probability, and history in classrooms. Museums created exhibits dedicated to the penny that shocked the world, using it as a metaphor for hidden potential. And in that sense, the 1987 penny wasn't just a coin anymore, it was a movement. It united generations. It reminded everyone that history isn't buried in textbooks or locked in vaults. Sometimes, it jingles quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. For those who own one, the emotional connection runs deep. Some refused to sell their 1987 pennies, even when offered large sums, saying they feel part of something greater. They talk about how holding that coin connects them to 1987 itself, a time when America was still finding its rhythm after turbulent decades. The Berlin Wall still stood, technology was accelerating, and optimism was cautiously returning. The penny, small and unassuming, captured that sense of resilience. It symbolized the idea that endurance pays off, that something small and steadfast can outlast everything. Then there are the skeptics. Those who say the coin's story is exaggerated, that the $95 million valuation is inflated myth-making. Yet, even they can't deny the effect the story has had. Whether every detail is verifiable or not doesn't change what it represents. Legends don't need absolute proof, they need belief, and belief has value of its own. Every collector who searches through a handful of change because of that legend is part of keeping it alive. The debate over value continues in auction houses and collector circles. Some argue that the true worth of the most perfect 1987 cent lies not in its metal but in its cultural weight, the way it captured imaginations worldwide. In a sense, its monetary price is almost secondary. If a simple penny can inspire millions to look closer at their world, to treasure history, and to see beauty in simplicity, then its true worth might be beyond measure. Even today, you can find the echoes of that excitement in online marketplaces. Listings pop up titled, 1987 Rare Era Penny, Could It Be Worth Millions? Accompanied by photos taken under kitchen lights, hopeful descriptions, and a hint of wonder in the words. Most of those coins are ordinary, of course. But the dream behind them is real. Each listing, each search, each magnified inspection continues the legacy of the 1987 penny, a story still unfolding, 1 cent at a time. The story of the 1987 1-cent coin ends not with a period, but with an echo that continues to resonate through time, through the hearts of collectors, and through every hand that ever held a penny and wondered, what if? The tale of that small copper coin is more than a story of money. It's a story of mystery, legacy, and the magic hidden in the smallest corners of history. Imagine, for a moment, that tiny disc of copper and zinc, just 19.05 millimeters across, weighing 2.5 grams, holding the power to make people dream again. A coin minted in the shadows of history, circulating quietly in pockets, passing through millions of hands without notice, until one day, someone decided to look closer. That's where all great discoveries begin, with curiosity, with attention to detail, with a sense of wonder strong enough to pierce the veil of the ordinary. The 1987 penny did not just redefine value, it redefined possibility. It showed the world that rarity does not depend solely on quantity, it depends on story, on circumstance, on those microscopic imperfections that make something truly one of a kind. Out of the billions produced that year, one single coin broke the mold of expectation. And that single coin, the one that stunned the world with its $95 million price tag, became the symbol of something greater, that even the most common things in life can hold unimaginable worth when viewed through the right lens. Today, collectors still whisper about that coin. They speak of the faint Ms. strike on the reverse side, the unusual texture on the rim, the slightly deeper engraving of Lincoln's jawline that sets it apart. They debate whether it was a mint error or a transitional planchet, a test strike or an accident of chemistry. But in truth, it doesn't matter how it happened. What matters is that it did. What matters is that it captured the imagination of millions, transforming a cent into a legend. There's something poetic about that. The penny, often dismissed, stepped over, or tossed aside, became the ultimate treasure. In a world obsessed with wealth and rarity, the 1987 1-cent coin reminded everyone that value isn't just in gold or silver, but in stories, in memories, in the power of history to surprise us when we least expect it. The market for these coins continues to evolve. Auctions now attract international bidders, museums display them under glass with reverence, and documentaries retell the journey from minting press to multimillion-dollar marvel. But behind all the glamour, the true essence remains simple: a penny, a moment, a miracle. For those who hold on to a 1987 penny, even an ordinary one, there's a quiet pride. It's a connection to a story bigger than themselves. It's a reminder that somewhere out there, someone once looked at the same date, the same face of Lincoln, the same memorial on the reverse, and saw more than copper. They saw possibility. They saw the American spirit engraved into metal, resilience, transformation, and the endless pursuit of meaning in the mundane, and that's where the story transforms from a tale about a coin to a reflection about life itself. Because life, much like that penny, is made up of tiny details, overlooked moments, and unexpected treasures. The rarest experiences often come from the most ordinary days. The most priceless lessons are often found in things we once ignored. Just as the 1987 penny turned a cent into a fortune, life has a way of turning small choices into monumental outcomes. So maybe that's why this coin continues to captivate generation after generation. It's not just about the minting process, or the auction, or the chemistry. It's about what it represents. Hope. Discovery. The belief that no matter how small, no matter how insignificant something may seem, it can still carry extraordinary potential. Somewhere right now, another person is picking up a penny from a sidewalk. Maybe it's a 1987. Maybe not. But as that coin glints in the sunlight, the legend of the $95 million cent lives on. Not because of its monetary value, but because of the lesson it carries. Look closer. Value the details. Respect the craft. And never underestimate the power of small things. Every coin has a journey, and so does every person. Each bears the marks of time, the wear of experience, and the silent stories that make them unique. The 1987 penny simply reminded the world that even something as tiny as a cent can change everything when the right eyes finally see it.